Getting to western North Carolina. I wish I could get there more often. What's the handle there? Go ahead.
Okie doke, Harry. The handle is Jim. Juliet, India, Mike. I live in the western part of North Carolina, a little place called Robbinsville, NC. And I'm not far from the Cherokee Indian Reservation. You might know where that's at. And the next little town close to me is Murphy and Bryson City and Andrews, North Carolina. Roger?
Oh, Jim, up in Robbinsville, North Carolina. Yeah, very nice to meet you today, Jim. Nice seeing you down here. The town again.
Some nights I've stayed up all night, get in a big rag chew and get to talking to people, you know. Used to talk to one old guy, he was in New York City. We'd start off at 11 o'clock and we'd talk till 1 o'clock or, you know, hour or so. Then I've talked to about every state and talked to Russia and places I have to look them up on the map that I've never heard of. And then you take the 10-meter band here and the 2-meter band and bounce your voice off of the moon, hit the moon and bounce and come back over 10 meters on the HF. They call that a downlink, and it'll bounce off of the moon, and you turn your HF on and hear your voice when it bounces off of the moon back to the earth.
Is there a delay on that?
Just a minute. And if you're lucky, you can talk to the astronauts when they're going up to the moon. If you're real lucky and can catch them. I know one guy, he talked 9 seconds. I never have. I ain't been that lucky.
That's very good, but
My glasses, I stepped on them, broke the handles off of them. So I'll have to do like they did in the old days. I believe that was in '82 that I made whiskey for the Heritage Festival. Jim Tom Hedrick cranks up his whiskey machine in Robbinsville a Saturday. Said Jim Tom Hedrick, master of an ancient craft with roots going back to the peat bogs of Ireland, is currently turning out corn whiskey without fear of hindrance of the law. With temporary dispensations, the 44-year-old native of the Snowbird Mountains set up a copper moonshine still here a Saturday on the grounds where the second annual Great Smoky Mountain Heritage Festival opened a 5-day run. It's going to be sweet mash, Jim Tom said. The way you want to make it is to make it so they have no hangovers from drinking it. You get it and fix it and run it and run clean stuff. I kept my still clean and everything about it, and I cleaned my still after every run. Of course, that's John Parrish from Asheville, a writer that's writing this. Mm-hmm. It said, in his time, Jim Tom has had a lot of stills, from 30-gallon stills to 60-gallon rigs, and he never lost a single one to the law. The law tried to catch me, he said, but they never have yet. But they've been pretty close. They've been in within 50 feet, and me a sitting there making the rum with a small rig, and they never seen me. The way it was, I was in a power line right away, and there was a deep, thick laurel all around it, and I was right in the middle of it, and that's where I had dug in my still. And they came down the ridge, and I heard them say, there can't be no still in here. We've searched it all out. And me a sitting there a running. We lived down the road down here, and I was little enough that I still had my red wagon. And it would tire up on me, something would break, and right down through yonder I'd go to this old Indian man. He was old, he sat out in the yard, that little bitty hut. I've got a condominium here to what he had. That's why I get so tickled. He'd get his little box of tools out, get his nuts and bolts, and It was like a brand new one when he got done. Boy, I put one knee in it and pushed with the other leg. Then he stayed with this lady and her husband. And his name was Solomon Bird. He died here about 2 years ago at 90. He was 90 something, I forgot exactly. Between 90 and 100, he was in between there. And she was bad to make jelly and stuff in the summer, blackberry jelly and jam. She had a little room she kept all that in. Down I'd go, and I said, Josie, I need a quart of jelly. And I said, make me some bread. Well, she'd fire up that old wood stove, smoke just a twisting, and she'd make me a big pan of bread. I'd get me a spoon. I'd eat that whole quart of jelly. Just a little fella sitting in there. I'd eat that. I was there every day, just as regular as a clock a-ticking. And they'd go to town on Saturday to get their groceries. They had to carry them. They had to walk. And me and my 2 sisters and 1 brother, we'd be waiting on them at the house to get our candy. Saul, the older man I was talking about, had a little poke of candy. He said, well, I forgot to get anything. Boy, we'd scream. Oh, here it is. Sometimes he'd have a watermelon on his shoulder. We'd eat it hot. It didn't matter. We'd eat a pumpkin. Well, then after I got on up with some age, I started running with all these Indian boys that's my size and age now. I stayed with them, stayed all night. And I've ate a whole lot with them, you know. Just about every time they ate mushrooms, stuff that the Indians ate back then. You know, the old mushrooms that grows out, boy, they could fix them things. And all their meat they kill, like their squirrels and rabbits. And I never did eat a possum. I would stay all night with them. I was bad to drink, you know. So we'd go to Waynesville over there next to Asheville and get us, you were just allowed 2 cases of beer. But we had drank all we could drink before we started back. You didn't worry about getting stopped. There wasn't no 2-way radios. Just crawl under the wheel and let her roll. Of course, I could hold a lot of it back then. I could hold a case and it didn't faze me. Because I used to drive to New York City, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Delaware, all through there, and stop at every beer joint. I stopped at every one that I seen. Then if there's a seafood place there, I'd eat me a load of fresh shrimp, them big pitchers of beer, just keep her riding. Then I come, you know, I was doing chauffeuring for a guy. He paid me $40 a week, 3 meals a day, and my clothing. If I would just stay with him and drink. He picked me up right over here and down yonder at 8 o'clock of a morning, got off at 4:30. That was my job, to drink and to chauffeur him. He said, I've got to have somebody to help me drink this stuff. I said, well, you got him. And that went on for 13 years. And then he finally just kicked the bucket on me. So that stopped my chauffeuring. And I remember when I was 2 to 3 years old, when I was just a little bitty baby, and my mama said, Jim, you can't remember. I said, I know what I can. I said, and I tell her something had happened. Well, she said, I guess you can. I said, you remember the time that I crawled up under the floor and I hollered and told you to come here? I said, I couldn't even hardly talk. I said, it's the prettiest thing seen. She come out there and I had a little mole that stays under the ground. I had it, boy, he's just as slick. I brought him out of there. I said, look here, and it was alive. I know I wasn't over 3, and I laid it right out in the trail, and I laid right there with it all day till my daddy got in from work. I said, look here what I've got. And he always left me a half of a moon pie in his dinner bucket. And I'd reach and get that dinner bucket because I knew that moon pie was in there, and I'd eat that. And then, like I told you before, if I'd done something I wasn't supposed to, I wouldn't run to meet him. I'd lay down, act like I was asleep. Well, I know they couldn't sleep forever. I'd have to wake up sometimes. Then he'd see what I'd done. Boys, he'd whip me. He never did learn me, I don't reckon there. I'd pull his green apples and green watermelons. I'd pull them watermelons and put me a little dirt on that stem. Me and him be out there. I said, look at there. I said, that one's come loose. He'd examined it. He said, you pulled that. How do you know? He said, it's still green right there. He said, when they come loose themselves, they're dead looking. Them little bitties, they all know me. They say, yonder comes him a-riding his Harley Davis. They think it's a Harley. Back in the 60s, you didn't have to worry about a Tiger insurance. I'd ride these roads. I got stopped right, the store wasn't here, then I got stopped right up there one time coming up this hill. I had my buddy with me and he was on. We had an old 48 Plymouth that we took a double bitted axe and cut the top off of it. We just had the seats and the running gears. No brakes, just emergency brake. He said, I'm sending you to the penitentiary in the morning. He said, I'll be out of you at 8 o'clock. We said, all right, we'll be ready. I went on home and told him my daddy took that car away from me and said, I'm taking it back to the man you got it from. We got $50. We just went up there and straight wired it and drove it off. We said we paid for it, we're taking it with us. And we hid it over here on the railroad grade. No water in the radiator, not steam, just to getting it. It looked like a freight train. We didn't hurt them back then. You couldn't hurt them things. And we kept it that time until we, I don't know what we ever done with that. Yeah, and if a highway patrol pulled you over, he'd say, have you got insurance? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to write Raleigh a letter, and it'll be 2 weeks before it gets back, and if you are lying to me, I'm gonna charge you with it. Now then, get on the pen machine about 2 or 3 seconds. He's valid, but back then he had to write a letter, plump and send it, mail it, go plumb to Raleigh and back. Then by the 2 weeks, they forgot about it. And if one got after you out through here and you outrun him, you could hide. Then in 30 minutes, you could get back out. But now, if you get back out in front of them, they'll write you up. That was back in the 50s and 60s. Talking about bicycles, my first cousin lived right down there. We was about 12 years old, and his brother was in the service, and they bought Chad and Vance a Shelby bicycle. That's the name of it, Shelby, for Christmas. We rode it all day. We'd take time about up the highway, and I brought it right up here, and the road was gravel. That was about 4:30 to 5 in the evening. It lasted one day. I come through here a-flying, and it got to shimmying right down there to the house with me. It was just upside down. It tore that thing. It was the wheels just like that, and we demolished that thing in one day. Yeah, Vernon said, I'll never buy another. That's when he was in the service, and he had a 41 Chevrolet, an old maroon one, and he took that thing down to the base. I don't know where he was stationed, unless it was Fort Bragg or somewhere. He drove that old 41 Chevrolet. And coming in, he seen something laying on the highway, and it was a full case of Lucky Strike cigarettes. None filters, just a regular, and he just picked them up and throwed them in that car, and they was I don't know how many cartons in a case, probably 50. Mm-hmm. Me and old Chad and Vance out there playing around that old car, and I said, they good? I said, look in there, and we like to smoke. Yeah, you talk about hiding cigarettes. We had them hid under every leaf, and we smoked for a month. Then my uncle, he was one-legged down here. He was a watch tinker. He rode a mule and a buggy for 32 years on this road going to Robbinsville to work on. He's a watch tinker. I've caught him out of many of a time. It'd take us a long time to get into town in that old buggy. He'd tell me to work the brake. We start to go up a hill. I'd kind of push the brake on. He'd tell that old mule, say, get up there, get. Me scooting the wheel. But he'd look back, Jim Tom, he said, turn the brakes loose. And he'd take 3 ears of corn to feed it at lunch. He'd start back home about 4 o'clock. Probably made $2. And had one leg. Old Kit, that was her name. She finally died. Then he bought one named Bill. It was white. And he hooked it to the buggy and rode it. But he had 2 buggies right over here in the barn. Them same 2 buggies after he retired. Me and Chad and Vance got them out and made guiding wagons out of them. We took the shaves off and get up on that seat and stir it with our feet.
Oh, yeah.
And that first hill above my house a while ago, I was coming up, we took them over, we pushed them over there and go ride them off there, and we left the road right over in that big curve, and it broke spokes out. today them wagons would be, had that little top on it, they'd be worth probably $2,000 a piece. We'd make us a barn there and get in his barn over where them buggies at, kill his chickens. He had a big Dominicker rooster and he wouldn't have took nothing for it, he said. And me and Chad made us a spear and put a piece of a Prince Albert can right in the end of it, real sharp. Chad said, let me just see how this thing shoots. That big Dominicker in there looking around. We got it right up the ridge and buried that one. And he just, till this day, before he died, like to know where his rooster ever went. We ain't got no ideas. Just don't know. Hawk caught it. Too big to carry off, he said.
With that, sir. November Delta 4, Quebec. ND4Q call.